Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madame Matot is how the correct pronunciation. Is that true? Hello. I'm just asking you the correct pronunciation. It's Matot?
Méthode, oui, c'est ça, Monsieur Perkins.
Ça va, Monsieur Perkins.
Merci.
That's fine, Mr. Perkins.
The Cycle Capital owns shares in Ecarum, Alberta Biofuels.
Pouvez-vous reprendre?
Could you please repeat the question? I didn't understand.
I'm going to go through a list of companies. I'd like you to confirm whether or not Cycle Capital, any of your funds, has made investments in them. Ecarum, Alberta Biofuels, ENEKREM. Do you have an investment in that? Yes or no?
Encare Alberta Biofuels is a company. We are an...
La réponse est non directe.
Well, the answer is no, not directly. We do not invest directly in them.
They're listed on your website, $12 million. MindSense Technologies, you've admitted here, you had investments in, correct?
Nous détenons moins de 10%.
We have less than 10% interest in MindSense.
Slush fund. How about Spark Microsystems?
Dans le cas de Spark,
In the case of Spark Microsystems, I was not on, or when I was a member of the board, we weren't an investor. We only became an investor years later.
Vous êtes un investisseur.
on va répondre.
Sorry, I will give you a clear answer. Our investment began after I was a member, a board member.
Concentric Agriculture, Inc.
Oui, nous sommes investisseurs.
Yes, we are an investor in Concentric.
$2.6 million they got from the slush fund. Polystevert.
J'aimerais clarifier une chose.
I'd just like to clarify something, if that's possible. Mr. Chair, is that possible? Well, it's Mr. Perkins' time, so if he allows you to respond, yes. Mr. Perkins, do you let me? Go ahead.
We're looking for yes or no. Does Cycle Capital own any ownership of Polystevert, Inc.?
Oui, nous sommes.
Yes, we are investors.
$1 million from the slush fund. ViewReal.
Nous n'étions pas investisseurs.
We were not investors when I was on the board.
Are you an investor now?
Oui, l'investissement s'est fait en 2000.
Yes, in 2022, we invested, and then I had not been on the board for at least a year.
Sell your fuel?
Non.
No.
Chrysalis Labs?
Non.
Borealis Wind?
Non.
These are the ones I think that were listed by the Auditor General you referenced earlier.
Non. En fait, dans le tableau que j'ai remis que vous n'avez pas reçu, monsieur.
In the table I gave you that you didn't receive?
Est-ce que je peux
I'm just double checking the General's list.
C'était ce qui était.
Alors, c'est Mr. Perkins qui a la...
It's Mr. Perkins who has the floor currently. He will be asking you questions. Now, what often happens is that if you want to say something, it's quite likely that another member here may ask you questions that you will be able to include your answer in, but that's how it works. However, Mr. Perkins is the one who has the floor right now.
I'll ask again. Chrysalis Labs?
No.
Chrysalis Labs? No. Borealis Wind? No.
Non.
Equisphere?
Non.
Global Spatial Technology?
Non.
Fractal Systems?
Non.
GHGSat?
Non.
Green Mantra?
Oui.
Yes.
Helen Inc.?
Non.
Hortu?
Non.
Metamaterials?
Non.
You're not an investor in metamaterials?
Non.
Never have been?
Never happened.
Peak Power?
Non.
So why are all these listed as conflicts of interest by the Auditor General?
Merci beaucoup pour votre question.
Well, thank you for the question. Here is how I proceeded during those years. I declared potential conflicts and real conflicts. So anytime there was a meeting of the board, we would be given a list. If we were analyzing a file, I would declare potential interests of conflict. But usually an analysis takes about 8 up to 15 weeks, depending on the cases at hand. But during these COVID relief measures, we decided that we wouldn't invest in these committees. And at times for years, so we weren't investing in those companies. And in fact, the Auditor General was very clear at the time in her report. And I'll try to quote her here. She said, during those 2 votes, in 63 cases, the members of the board had voted, even though they might have declared a potential conflict of interest. But in 2/3 of the cases, there were not conflicts of interest. And that was my case. So out of the 23 companies...
Ne
Thank
sommes
you.
pas
Are you an
investisseurs.
investor in Terramera?
Non,
Advanced Intelligence Systems?
non,
Seminos?
non,
Pyrowave?
non.
Okay. So you do have a number here where you received, and the companies you invested in received at least $10 to $20 million of green slush fund money while you were on the board.
Je m'excuse, j'ai mal.
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand what you were saying. Can you repeat?
Perkins, encore une fois.
So between the yeses and nos, there were a number of yeses here, and of those yeses, it adds up to about $20 million, I believe, of SDTC money that went to those companies while you were on the board. Is that correct?
Pendant mon mandat,
During my term, my tenure, we looked at about 250 files over the 5 years I was there, 4 businesses through programs during which I declared my interests or investments, and I recused myself. So there was $10.4 million, and we were...
Based on what the confirmation you had earlier. I'm not asking for a
Avec les nuances
conflict
que
of
je- avec-
interest explanation of how the board operated. I'm asking for, based on your yes or no's, you have about $20 million here of companies that you had investments in
votre
while you
chiffre
were
de
on the
20
board.
millions est faux, Monsieur Perkins. Votre chiffre de 20 millions est faux. Je vous demanderai d'écouter ma réponse.
is incorrect. The number is incorrect.
To you, I'm sure Mr. Perkins.
up
Next, we have Mr. Perkins again for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So based on your testimony here today, you have companies that Cycle Capital invested in, which you're partial, if not full owner of Cycle Capital, have received over $30 million of investments from SDTC while you were on the board. You are the biggest single beneficiary of the SDTC money while sitting on the board. Now, you're aware that the SDTC Act, which applied to you, says that board members cannot themselves benefit, nor can their family members benefit. So your companies received more than $30 million while you were on the board. Isn't that a benefit contrary to the SDTC Act?
Ce que vous dites est faux.
Well, what you're saying is false. Out of 250 files that were analyzed when I was a member of the board over those 5 years, 4 companies from Cycle Capital received $10.4 million. 4 companies for which I declared my stake. I followed this governance protocol. I recused myself from the discussions, and I had...
Received $10 million alone from SDTC while you were on the board. $10 million just in one company. Now, I will ask again. No, you don't get to interrupt me. Sorry, you don't get to interrupt me. You don't get to interrupt me.
Order. We really cannot have people speaking over.
You don't get to interrupt me.
Order. Mr. Perkins, Madame Méthode, s'il vous plaît. Vous aurez l'opportunité de répondre.
You will have an opportunity to answer once he has asked his question, and I am certain that if you don't get an opportunity, another member will allow you to respond. I'm sorry, but that's how things work here. It's Mr. Perkins' time, and he's the one who will ask his questions. So you are here to respond to the questions that are put from the members. And to date, things have been going well. There have been a couple of times when you were not able to respond and another member provided you with that time to respond. So I'm sure that will happen again. Mr. Perkins, may I ask a question? To me, you may. Chair, when there are statements that are incorrect, that are false, that are part of the question, well, you will have an opportunity to respond. I'm trying to do my best. So, Mr. Drouin, go ahead. I have the utmost respect for my colleagues and for the chair, but you, as the chair, need to make sure that there is a good flow of back and forth. But if there are statements that are false, then the witness has to be allowed an opportunity to respond to that. Well, as I stated, this is Mr. Perkins' time. There's a conversation happening. It is going well. At times, people are cut off, yes. But you will have an opportunity to respond.
Whether it's 10 million or whether it's 30 million or whether it's 50 million, it's contrary to the Act. You broke the Act that you served on. The SDTC Act says you cannot personally benefit. When SDTC made investments in your companies, while you were on the board, you broke the Act. Did you not? It doesn't say in the Act recuse.
No, but the principles of governance and ethics that we are taught when we sit on the board is to declare our stakes, our interests, and to recuse ourselves. And it's the same in all those other companies that have connections with the Canadian government or any other government in Canada. That is the practice.
Public board and spending taxpayer money is to not vote and have a board you're sitting on give money to companies that you own interests in. Now, I will ask you again, when you joined the board in 2016, the value of Cycle Capital in its assets under management was a little over 140 million, and when you left, it was 600 million. Seems like it was pretty good business for Cycle Capital to get money from SDTC where you're on the board, and that you also utilized it to screen companies.
C'est quoi, premièrement, l'affirmation?
First, your statement is confusing. Asset under management. Are you talking about asset under management? Yes, in 5 years, there was probably very good performance. However, we are a private fund, not a public fund, and you are confusing two different things, and I'm very surprised, Mr. Perkins. You know, these are the kinds of things that you should understand.
So when the culture of corruption on the board by Annette Fisherian came on and changed, there were 9 directors, including your colleague Guillaume Met, who voted for money for himself. You had money given to your companies. Stephen Kukucher had money given to his companies. There is a culture of corruption that you were participating in approving not only your money, but the money to other board members. Isn't that correct?
C'est complètement faux.
That is absolutely false. And when Jim Balzilli...
You didn't vote for Mr. Emet's companies. You didn't vote for your own because you left the room.
Le lien que vous faites avec la corruption.
The connection you are making with corruption is absolutely unacceptable, Mr. Perkins. It's false.
Members that were appointed, whether they were liberals or separatists, were using this fund in a little cozy group to support each other's companies. That's exactly what happened. That's what the Auditor General found. If you had been a governor and council appointment, do you believe the ethics commissioner would have found you not guilty?
No, I don't think so, no.
Not guilty or guilty of breaking the ethics laws of Canada?
Je crois que
I believe that the ethics commissioner can reach the conclusions they want to reach. I'm not the commissioner. All I can say is that when I arrived at the board, I was told what was expected of me, how to comport myself. I have always followed those recommendations, and I went even further because I was declaring even potential conflicts, not actual conflicts. Out of 32 times, 28 were a potential. They weren't real conflicts of interest.